There are over 130 people on death row in North Carolina. Jimmy Lawrence, 27 years on death row. For the first-degree murder of Dale Jerome McLean, he received a death sentence. In connection with the kidnapping of victim Gwen Morrison, he was also found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and first-degree kidnapping. After dating for nearly 2 years, Lawrence and Gwen Morrison called it quits in early December 1996. Morrison moved in with Dale McLean at the end of December the same year. The gunshot wounds on McLean's right arm, nose, and forehead were not the fatal injuries. The cause of death was any one of the 4 bullets that entered McLean's brain through the right side of his skull. A forensic firearm examiner from the SBI determined that the shell casings collected at the scene from around McLean's body had been fired from Lawrence's 9mm pistol. Clifford Dre Miller, 23 years on death row. Miller was found guilty of first-degree kidnapping, felonious larceny, first-degree murder, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and felonious conspiracy to conduct robbery with a dangerous weapon. Reach Smith, 23 years on death row. He was convicted of first-degree murder and felony larceny. The autopsy revealed only one significant external injury, a scratch on the victim's left shin. Internal injuries were consistent with manual choking, bruises and bleeding into the muscles surrounding the voice box, and bits of hemorrhage inside the structure of the thyroid cartilage. The victim's hands were swollen and purple-red in color, indicating he was alive at the time Smith bound him with the tape and electrical cord. The doctor stated that the victim's death was caused by asphyxia resulting from blockage of the nose and mouth due to tape bound around the head. Once Smith placed tape on the victim's nose and mouth, he became brain dead in 2 to 3 minutes and his heart stopped after 10 to 20 minutes. The medical examiner also determined that the victim could have remained conscious for a portion of that time. He could have regained consciousness after Smith choked him and been aware of his condition, but because of his lack of oxygen, the victim would have been unable to move. Terrence Campbell, 22 years on death row. He was indicted on February 21, 2000 for first-degree murder and robbery with a dangerous weapon. Evidence collected at the crime scene and from Campbell's body was sent to the State Bureau of Investigation for DNA testing. DNA profiles taken from the cigarette butts collected from around the victim's body were consistent with the victim and Campbell. Blood found on Campbell's jeans matched the victim's. An autopsy performed on the victim revealed approximately 11 blunt trauma wounds to the head. The wounds were found on the front, top, and back of the head, along with a skull fracture located under the wounds on the left front of the head. According to the pathologist who performed the autopsy, the injuries resulted in massive cerebral damage and intercerebral hemorrhage. Eddie Lamar Crowley, 19 years on death row. He was charged on January 12, 2004 with murder. In addition, he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 1 count of conspiracy to conduct robbery with a dangerous weapon, 2 counts of robbery with a dangerous weapon, and 1 case of attempted robbery with a dangerous weapon. Terry Moore, 21 years on death row. In Mocksville, North Carolina, Simon Wilford Brown owned and operated a wholesale grocery store with the assistance of his family, which included his son Charles. Charles showed up at the store at about 7:30 a.m. on March 6, 1998. He went through the front door and shut it afterwards. After a quarter of an hour, he heard his dad go into the shop. Charles heard his father calling for him a little while later and hurried to the front of the business. Brown indicated the front door with a gesture, saying that a man had stabbed him and fled to the right out of the entrance. On March 15, 1998, 9 days later, Brown passed away. The autopsy's performing forensic pathologist, Patrick Eugene Lantz, stated in his testimony that complications from a chest stab wound were the cause of death. Terry Moore had previously robbed another store 2 times. Byron Lamar Waring, 17 years on death row. Raleigh police were called to an apartment building close to Walnut Creek Parkway early on November 8, 2005 to look into a report of suspected assault and essay. Officer David Naumuk arrived to the site first, followed by Raleigh Fire Department personnel. Officer Naumuk spotted a white male who would subsequently be identified as Andrew Bennett Pipkin coming toward the firefighters and clutching a phone to his ear as he attempted to find the correct building in the complex. After asking Pipkin to lead him to the victim, Officer Naumuk trailed him down a flight of stairs and through a breezeway. The officer discovered Pipkin kneeling next to the victim, a 23-year-old Caucasian woman named Lauren Redman, when he arrived at the foot of the steps. Trying to contain the victim's intestines, Pipkin's hand was on her stomach. She was covered in blood, sitting up Indian style on the sidewalk with her head slouched and her hair covering her face. Her arms were stretched out over her knees. The officer stood watch over the victim's apartment door as emergency medical services and firefighters started seeing to their needs. The victim was pronounced dead in the ambulance. Waring received the death penalty for this crime. William Robinson, 13 years on death row. On May 16, 1999, Robinson informed Ronald Bullock that he needed Bullock's assistance to rob the Wilson, North Carolina Pizza Inn. Bullock accepted the arrangement. Getting the clothing and weapons to utilize in the robbery, the two started getting ready for the crime. At 9 p.m., the two entered the Pizza Inn through the takeout entrance. Both Bullock and Robinson approached the cash register with their firearms drawn and their faces covered. The victim, John Rushton, who was also the Pizza Inn manager, came around the back of the establishment to the cash register. Rushton was told to place the cash in a bag by Robinson, who was pointing a gun at him. When Rushton moved towards him, Robinson shot him in the head. Bullock and Robinson then ran away. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.